Alright, so it's been about a week for LOAon and the NA roadmap, so we have a good idea of what's going on for quarter 1 of 2024. So let's talk about that, let's talk about region diff, and also just kind of the future of Lost Ark. Starting off with LOAon. Everything that was showed off, everything that was presented in LOAon, it was good. Nothing felt like a complete miss of what they showed off. And I think it's probably the best LOAon that we've seen since NA launch. The last two, if I recall, were a bit of a flub, but there is a lot of new vertical progression. There's the new awakening system, which is the third awakening system, which is now just like an upgrade to awakening. Breaker, upper honing, there's a lot. You've probably seen already all the recap videos, so let's not talk about that. The only actual L that I can see that they presented is that horizontal catch-up thing is an event. It's not a permanent thing, and that should just be an all-time thing. Also, just fucking delete collectibles already. Now, going into LOAon this year, I did have a little bit of a copium wish list, and unfortunately they were part of the Q&A section. Vertical progression and catch-up, that is one thing that I really wish they would have talked about more or had something with, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. The only thing LOAon presented properly in that regard for catch-up mechanics and stuff like that is a little bit more on solo raids, which is looking pretty good. But beyond progression changes, the other two copium hopium things I was going for is things that we've talked about on this channel. So that would be in trophy changes and also support changes. The short is they're still planning to delete in trophy, and they're actually thinking about reworking yearning as well. Potentially even deleting that too, which with third awakening, they might also have to do something dominion. So we could be seeing a pretty big change in how sets work. I think a set overhaul would be actually really nice for the game. And the truth is, I didn't really expect them to talk about entropy or supports that much. I see those as pretty controversial topics. There are people who like entropy as how it is, and also people who like supports as how they are. Events like LOAon or now Festa, or whatever they're going to call it, these are like get hype celebration events. It's something that's supposed to give W's and excitement for everybody. This isn't the place for this kind of stuff to be talked about, unless they can come up with a solution that they think that is perfect that everybody will love. So they're going to have a lot of complete confidence in what they're doing to really think about presenting something like that at LOAon. So then we can move on to our roadmap. I think it's probably pretty much everything we expected. Things of what we expected and bits and pieces from LOAon as well, like we are getting Breaker. However, at the end of the roadmap, there is Theamine. This has resulted in a bit of schism in the community. Is it too soon or is it a good timing for it? So I ran a personal poll here for my community, and you guys are kind of split there, really, really close. Like 1% difference as of recording this video. And even on Reddit, yes, it is leading towards too soon, but it's not that huge of a gap. I think a lot of global will be ready for normal mode on release, but probably not hard. Now, I actually had a comment that said it was a good time for normal, but too soon for hard. And I think actually staggering the release would be pretty good in the sense of reducing FOMO. However, I do know there's a lot of people who want to just prog hard right away. They want to deal with that challenge. Maybe some people want to do it blind. There's really just no situation of pleasing everyone. But yeah, the amounts of leaps required to get to hard mode, doing it bound would be pretty rough in that time frame. So hopefully there are just going to be more people who are content with doing with normal. Ivory Tower is now the only content where you are kind of being punished for only doing normal. And by punished, I mean you're getting something that you're going to replace with something in hard mode, which is just a concept I do not like. They finally did it with Bell by moving the ancient gear down to normal, and I was hoping they would do it at Ivory Tower too, but they didn't, and I'm sure they'll probably do it later on down the line. Just right now, it's kind of gift purple elixirs. Don't get me wrong, the cost reduction is nice, but still just something you're going to throw away. So now we can talk about region diff. So if you recall, like I mentioned before, the couple of few LOAons before this were not really seen as good. The KR feedback was that there wasn't enough vertical progression, and also Arcadia just felt like too happy, too peaceful, like you weren't needed. They did all these Makoko events and like that, and people in KR were not happy. So it got to the point where they actually did a stream talking about that, like an emergency broadcast stream after that, to talk about these issues that people brought up. So I think that was the driving force on why this is so much vertical progression and new raid content for the endgame players in KR in this LOAon. And I think that's really good. I think that is a really good thing to see out of developers, to really look at and take people's feedback and really try to address that moving on forward with the game. I've memed about this before, the whole you think you want this but you don't think from Blizzard, but it's absolutely true. There's just a lot of developers who just don't take their community seriously, and they don't consider their wants at all. And it just feels really bad to feel neglected by the people making the game and just make you not care about the future if you don't think they're caring about it. Now, I'm not saying the community is always right and do whatever they tell you. I'm just saying that it's just really refreshing and nice to see Smilegate really address the feedback in their own way, but still give them what they're asking for. But as you can see, they address those issues because that's what KR was vocal about. That's what they wanted. These are unfortunately not the same flaws and problems and the things that we want addressed over here in the global version. NA players care very much about the support issue and all that going on, along with progression. Progression is the main problem with the game, seen to by a lot of people. We're losing a lot of people because they feel like they cannot keep up or catch up to people in this game. You sacrifice either your life or your wallet to keep up in this game and grind it out. Because going back to a top topic I've talked about before is because our content cadence, we're now like what 10 or so months behind, I would say, to farm things like gems and overall bound materials. They had Brill as their endgame for an additional 3 months over us. That sounds awful, yeah, but they do have content droughts while we are just being rushed with content. And again, this is another scenario where you can't make everybody happy. This is just my conclusion on why NA and KR have such different mindsets. KR has a lot of people who are just juiced up to the max and just waiting for new content. While a common topic in NA is I'm not going to be able to hit normal for the new content. They get depressed and then they just don't want to play anymore and they might just quit. And it is kind of annoying when if you have your entire static and all your boys are hitting it for that content and you're not because you just got unlucky, which we're going to talk about progression and all that stuff in a future video, I promise. And then we have Saint over there, KR player. He says he has not done anything but low paying for silver in like over a year and a half, meaning that he has not done a single leapstone or shard daily because he just doesn't need them. And because KR has such a large active player base of people who are juiced up and don't need this material to hone up because they've had all this time to accumulate bound materials, materials that are unbound are a lot cheaper in KR. Now, with the release of Breaker, there was a balance patch that went with it. I think there's probably a good chance that we get this balance patch with the one that we're still missing. So we're probably going to get both balance patch knocked into one, just smashed together. 07 Rip Bozo for anybody who plays Hunger or RE, because you're probably not going to see the peak of your buffs. The fact that they held back on giving us this, and then now they're doing this other one here, just makes me feel like they're going to put them together, because I don't think they would give us one balance patch just to still be behind a balance patch and have people complain about that. Which, on the topic of balance, is actually pretty interesting. So if you looked on the roadmap, you saw that they're actually going to launch Theamine here unnerfed. So it's going to be like their launch version. So this is going to be NA's first time experiencing a raid unnerfed. But of course, comparing their first clears to our first clears is still not going to be anywhere near a 1-to-1 from KR to NA. The first being that NA players are obviously going to use a lot of KR guides and just have their own cheat sheet already. And then additionally, we're going to be at least 2 balance patches ahead of where they were when they launched. And as we've seen with the latest trends of balance patches, there has just been an excessive amount of power creep with just rebalancing. So even though we're not getting a nerf version, he's probably going to feel easier in NA just because our classes, our characters are so much stronger due to balance changes. Obviously, everything that are in LOAon and the roadmaps is not absolutely everything that we're going to see in KR and NA in the next 4 months. There will be smaller patches, updates, QLs, and stuff like that, and sometimes there are pretty big changes in these small updates that aren't announced. So to me, with how they take feedback and they actually listen, I think as long as people are talking about this, making these conversations, these pain points that people in NA are experiencing, there is a chance for change. Personally, I do think they have an understanding that honing is getting a bit out of hand at this. To me, how I see this upper honing system is a way of doing another soft reset, basically. The system is designed so that if you do pity, it's not as painful as it is currently. The downside is, it sounds like this is only intended for the 1620 plus stuff. But the very good news, the hopeful news that I have here is that they do actually keep all this new content at the same item level as Theamine. So I think this could potentially be a pretty good band-aid fix for the current situation with honing. But on the downside is it doesn't seem to be affecting getting to 1620 at all. So we still have a big problem there. But again, we're going to have a video dedicated to progression and the cause effects of it eventually. I will always be on the side of making things easier for new players to get into the game. I know there are a lot of people who do not like that idea of lessening whatever they kind of work they put into the game, but let's be honest, you're wasting your time on a game to begin with. Get fucked. But that's going to be it for this video. Like, subscribe. Thank you for all the support I've had in 2023. It's been a pretty good year. Sure, I didn't hit 1K, but I'll get there probably, right? I just found out the other day that sometime in the earlier days of the game that creators got packages with like swag and stuff like that. Most importantly, a Makoko plush. So I'm just saying, you know, notice me, AGS Senpai, so I can get that plush. I've been looking on eBay for that damn thing. I want the plush. Give me the Makoko. Also, let me know in the comments what you think of the future of the game. Bye.